I'll teach you a fun word in Spanish, adivinanza. It means riddle. Adivinanzas, riddles, used to be very, very popular with the people. Actually, I once heard a story from an old lady that she called las tres adivinanzas, the three riddles. It was a story about the priest in the church in a tiny little village long, long, long ago. He was a very short man, and the people gave him a nickname. They called him Padre Chiquito. Padre, because that means father. He was a priest. And Chiquito means small. He was a little man. So they called him Padre Chiquito. And the people loved Padre Chiquito for his kindness and his wisdom and for the gift he had of making people feel at peace with themselves. And then there was another small man in that village that everyone loved, but for a different reason. He could make people laugh. That man did not have a single hair on his head. So the people gave him a nickname. They called him pelón, the bald-headed one. And his bald head was full of jokes and stories and little poems and songs, pero más que nada adivinanzas. Mostly he knew riddles. That man could come up with a riddle about almost anything. Nobody else could ever think of a riddle that would stump pelón. Pelón was the one who would sweep out the church and keep the building in good repair for Padre Chiquito. And when the troubles of the villagers would begin to weigh upon their good priest, and he would begin to grow sad, Pelón could cheer him back up again with his jokes and his stories. Well, one Sunday morning, just as the people were gathering at their little village church, a carriage pulled up, and the governor of New Mexico stepped down out of that carriage. Now you have to understand that back in these times, the governor was not elected by the people. He was sent by the King of Spain. And a lot of those governors were more interested in making themselves rich than in serving the people. This governor was the worst one of that kind. So the people were very nervous when they saw the governor walk into their little village church and go to the front row and sit down. But as soon as Padre Chiquito began to speak, they felt a calmness come over them. He preached a beautiful sermon to them. They were so proud of their good priest. When the basket came around, they reached into their pockets and pulled out every penny they had and put it into the collection. The governor saw that, and it made him angry. He said, "Look at this. When my tax collectors come here, the people say, 'We're just poor farmers. We don't have any money to give you.' But they give away their money with both hands to that priest." And the governor began to think about how he could get rid of Padre Chiquito. When the Mass had ended and the people had returned to their homes, the governor stood up and walked up to the priest, shaking his head. He said, "Oh, I don't know, Padre. I'm not sure that you are wise enough to serve the people of this village well. I'm going to give you a test. I will give you 3 questions. You will have 3 days to think of the answers. If you can come to my palace with the correct answers, you may stay here among the people. But if you fail, I will have you removed, and I will put in your place a priest of my choosing." Well, Padre Chiquito didn't have any choice but to agree to the contest. And the governor started looking around for a good question. Over on the other side of the road, he saw a dog turn around several times in the grass and then lie down. That gave him the first question. He said, "First, you will have to tell me, ¿cuántas vueltas da un perro antes de acostarse?" Padre Chiquito repeated the question to himself. How many circles does a dog make before it lies down? He thought, how could there only be one answer to that question? It's probably a different number every time the dog lies down. The governor saw the worried look on his face, and he smiled to himself because he had thought of a second question. He said, "And then you will have to tell me, ¿qué tan hondo es el mar?" Padre Chiquito repeated the question. How deep is the sea? He thought, I'm a priest. I'm not a man of science. I don't know how deep the ocean is. Now the governor was smiling broadly because he had thought of a third question, and it was an impossible question to answer. He said, "And then you will have to tell me, ¿qué estoy pensando?" The poor priest shuddered when he repeated that question. What am I thinking? Nobody knows what another person is thinking. But the governor turned and walked away, leaving Padre Chiquito there wondering how he could answer those questions in 3 lifetimes, much less in 3 days. But later that morning, Pelón showed up with his broom to sweep out the church. He saw how worried the priest was. And when he learned the reason, he said, "Ay, no se te dé cuidado, Padre Chiquito. Don't worry about it," he said. "Let me borrow one of your robes and let me ride your little donkey. In 3 days, I'll go to the governor's palace. I will try to answer those questions for you." Padre Chiquito didn't think anyone could answer those 3 questions, but he saw no better choice. So 3 days later, Pelón dressed himself up in one of the priest's robes. He pulled the hood up over his head. He tied it under his chin. He climbed on the back of the priest's little gray burro, and he went riding down to the governor's palace. When he arrived there, he saw that the governor had invited all of his wealthy friends to watch him make a fool of the good priest. Pelón walked into the room and stood in front of that crowd of rich people. And the governor repeated his first question. "Tell me, ¿cuántas vueltas da un perro antes de acostarse?" Pelón said, "How many circles does a dog make before it lies down?" "Oh, that's easy, Your Excellency. Las que le dé la gana. As many as he wants to." And the governor's rich friends all said, "Oh, yes, that's the perfect answer to the question. That's how many circles a dog will make. Todas las que le dé la gana. As many as he wants to." The governor thought, "Ooh, this priest is more clever than I thought." But he knew that was the easiest question of all. He repeated his second question. He said, "Well, now tell me, ¿qué tan hondo es el mar?" Pelón said, "How deep is the ocean?" "Oh, that's easy too, Your Excellency. Una tirada de una piedra." The governor said, "What? You said 1 stone's throw? Una tirada de una piedra? You think that's all the deeper the ocean is?" But then he realized, ooh, that's true. If you throw a rock into the ocean, it will go exactly to the bottom, no matter where you are. The governor's rich friends all said, "Ah, that's another perfect answer. That's how deep the ocean is, one stone's throw." The governor thought, well, this priest is clever. But he had one more question, and it was an impossible question to answer. He said, "Now tell me, ¿qué estoy pensando?" "What are you thinking, Your Excellency?" "Oh, that's the easiest question of all. You think you're talking to Padre Chiquito, but you're not. You're talking to Pelón." And he pulled back the hood and showed everybody his bald head. The governor's rich friends all started to laugh, and the governor had to swallow his anger and join in the laughter with his friends. And then he invited Pelón to sit down and have a meal with him and his friends. And then he sent the good servant jogging back home with the happy news that Padre Chiquito could stay there and serve the people of that village as long as he lived. And that is exactly what he did.